Welcome to Forging Resilience, exploring for a different perspective on strength and leadership. Join me as we discuss experiences and stories with guests to help gain fresh insights around challenge, success, and leadership. Today on Forging Resilience, I'm joined by my good friend Carl Radley. Carl is the host of Weightloss, which is a bit like weight loss. Weightloss Warrior podcast. A very good friend, lives close to me here in Barcelona, and very supportive of my journey. And also it happens to mark what is quite a milestone for me in episode number 50. So I'm really pleased to be getting to speak to you today, Carl. Welcome back to the show, mate.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. First of all, episode number 50. That's a big milestone.
Yeah. So I've recorded a few more, but I'm going to push this one forward. You're going to jump the queue, mate. Favoritism gets shown sometimes. So
it's good to know being a friend of yours is worth something.
Well, it makes up for the first one we did. Is I just brushed over it and didn't announce it to the world. So, Carl, mate, yeah, like I said, welcome here, buddy. Give the viewers or listeners a quick overview of your story and what you're up to these days, mate.
Of course. And thanks again for having me back. So I'm from Essex originally, moved to Barcelona coming up 16 years ago. My professional life, I work in HR and payroll, the glamorous and sexy world of making sure people get paid on time, which is important, don't get me wrong. But a few years ago started a podcast surrounding weight loss and mindset, based off of a journey I'd been on myself to lose weight and become healthier. I was actually trying to do that in time for my 40th birthday because I have a wife, Spanish wife here called Nuria, similar to yourself. I have two boys who are going to be 10 and 8 next month. And as I was approaching 40, realized that the energy needed to be present, to be a good dad, for me, I was starting to see myself drift a little bit. I wasn't as healthy as I wanted to be. I was overweight. I wasn't taking care of myself enough. So made a promise to myself that before I got to 40, I'd be in the best shape I was. Did that, went through some incredible transformations personally in focusing on mindset, the journey that led me on, and how good I felt for it. So based off of that, began a podcast helping others to do the same, helping them to lose weight. And it's then expanded into me training and becoming a coach, working on weight loss mindset, to creating a membership site where people can come and get support they need. And really, just it becoming part of my life based off of my own experiences, which I find fascinating, but also really enjoyable.
Yeah, love it, mate. It's been a privilege to get to be part of that journey and watch it. Both your health and fitness journey and also your podcast journey, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But if you were to reflect back, Carl, then a few years, what were some of the pivotal moments for you on that weight loss journey, on that health and fitness mindset that you've been able to adapt and lean into?
Okay, so I think it's probably to give some context. I started gaining weight and would consider myself overweight from about 12 years old as I hit puberty. And
at 12?
I hit puberty at 12.
Sorry,
yeah.
at 12?
I know. Late starter, or is that an early starter? I don't know.
It's early, mate. I think,
yeah. Interested to know where you were going with that. Well, I started gaining weight. I probably didn't have the first few hairs until I was nearly 13, but started gaining weight when I was about 12. And I just remember it because I was in junior school and a comment was made to my mum by one of my friend's dads. And I suddenly became very aware, wow, he thinks I'm fat. And although I wouldn't say my life's been miserable being overweight in my teens, in my 20s, in my 30s, it was definitely a factor to, first of all, having lesser health than I could have done, poorer health, but also as a barrier to certain things, or I saw it as a reason why I couldn't do things or didn't achieve things, be it in going out with my friends, be it with girls, be it with my job. I always seem to come back to, it's because I'm overweight, it's because I'm unhealthy. and some of the habits, drinking, smoking, things like that, that really didn't serve me. And the journey that I've been on with that, I spent years, different diets, trying to lose weight, losing some, regaining weight, starting the 6-pack for the summer campaign, which started no word of a lie. Every year since I was 16, started on January 1st, 6-pack for the summer until I was about 34. Didn't achieve it once. By February, had nearly always given up, and chosen to wait until the next year to actually start taking care of myself, almost giving myself permission to say, okay, so you've failed or you're stopping. It's now okay to go the rest of the year not taking care of yourself. And then when January comes around again, then you can start again. So I'd spend that rest of that year not looking after myself. So that kind of context of how I was spending my life, not eating well, not really looking after myself, and then having that sudden decision that I really feel like I need to do this, not just for myself now, but for my family, for longevity, because, the difference between being 20 and being 40 is huge in terms of aches and pains, tiredness, and knowing that it's only going to decline and become harder. For me, it was a really important, I say, milestone or moment to reflect. And so as part of that journey, having that sudden realization that actually this is really critical now, and there are consequences that are only going to get bigger if I don't start taking care of myself. And so decided, though, having struggled so much to kind of stick to a diet or stick to going to the gym, I needed to look at it from a different angle. And for me, it was about how can I, first of all, what angle is left unexplored for me, and realize that I'd never really put mindset or self-belief or focusing on the mental health side of thing first in front of physical. So I thought, okay, that's a different angle. That's something different to try and that's something to look at. So I started, first of all, trying to understand why I'd struggled to lose weight and stay healthy, as opposed to, the habits of, I suppose it was about creating better habits. But instead of doing it from a place of restriction where, okay, I'm just going to only eat salads for the next 2 months so I lose weight, it was about, okay, why do I not feel able to resist eating a tub of Haagen-Dazs on a Friday night or a large pizza on a Saturday and 6 pints? Because that seems to be the habit. So that's what I needed to train out of me almost. And I'd never explored it. So that was probably the big shift and the start of my journey in terms of focusing on mindset, thinking about how I can actually strengthen my ability to achieve things. And it's leaked into every other area of my life. I realized that losing weight was actually a byproduct of having stronger mental health and looking out for myself. And the success I've experienced in other areas of my life, I believe, is directly linked to that as well, which is why I've become such a strong advocate of good mental health and the importance of having a healthy mindset. So I don't know if that answers your question. I went off on a bit of a tangent and background again, but
love it. As exactly how it should be answered, mate, from your heart. So yeah, in terms of that mindset that you've worked on, then Carl, what was some of the beliefs that you became aware of that you got to challenge or get rid of that were potentially holding you back?
So, I mean, the limiting belief, there's a long list of them. Some of them, I choose to forget. Some of them I'm still working on or still come back and surprise me every now and again, which is always interesting because it goes to show, like, working on yourself is a lifetime project. It doesn't have a finish line because you find new things that you didn't expect that challenge you. But in terms of the limiting beliefs I had leading up or when I started this, things like, this is how I'm supposed to be. I'm always going to be this way. No matter what I try or how hard I try, I'm always going to be overweight, or I'm always going to fail if I try to become healthier, because I had so much evidence spanning, years, my whole adult life, that told me I was always going to give up. I was always going to fail. And that, I would say, at some moments probably prevented me moving forwards or even getting started or giving myself the opportunity to really succeed. So I'd say that was definitely a key one. Another one was probably that you don't finish things. And this was something that I I connected to other areas of my life, like with procrastination. And I guess it was a case of, you don't finish things, you're going to start it, you're not going to complete it, so you might as well give up. And it was almost as if I gave myself that permission to quit sooner on certain things, not just with weight loss, but I saw a pattern emerge in other areas of my life as well, be it with relationships, be it with my work, be it with anything that I had to do. I would kind of delay, I would kind of put it off, and then realize that it was because I didn't believe I would actually do it in the first place. So I was making these big, bold statements, but I guess no real intention, or at least a belief that I could actually see it through to the end. And that was what probably the most powerful part of it.
So what are some of the things that you do then, that you hold really close to your heart or in your vision then, Carl, that remind you of where you've come from, where you are, and where you want to go?
It's interesting because I still now find it quite easy to forget how far I've come in certain things. And I think it's something that happens to all of us, that we focus on the lack, we focus on what's missing or what we can't do, as opposed to how much we have done and how much closer we are now perhaps than we were a year ago, 6 months ago, even a week ago in some cases. And I think the things that I hold really close to me, and it goes back actually from when we were coaching and you were just starting out on your coaching journey, and you said to me, like, just be kind to yourself and have that compassion, know that you are learning. That was the other thing you said as well. I think one of the statements were, I'm learning. And this was something that I think it's been really profound in holding that space for myself to just stop and say, it's okay. You're a human. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have doubts. You are going to be unsure and uncertain about your ability to do things. And perhaps sometimes you don't yet have the knowledge, skills, or tools to complete it. But don't worry about that. Just worry about what's the next step. What's the next thing you need to do to get a little bit closer. And I listened back to the first podcast episode we did, and I spoke about this rickety old bridge where you're stood in the middle, and rather than looking back at, going backwards or how far you've come, you look at how far you've still got to go in front of you. And I think sometimes stopping that and reversing it, maybe actually looking back over your shoulder and acknowledging or celebrating how much you've achieved and what you have done, is often the fuel to propel you that next step forward. Because if you come from a negative angle or your negative like headspace of, I can't get any further, I can't get any closer, you lose sight of just how much you've done. And when you do stop and look back at just how much you've achieved, it's pretty incredible, to the point where you can be a completely different person. And so that's really helped me.
I think that's the perfect analogy for the walk we did at the weekend as well, which was an organised event that Carl and I did, starting off in a local town, walking all the way to Montserrat, well, not at the top, but it's close enough for us. But
don't tell Geordie.
40 kilometres, just shy of, but we'll round it up for never letting the truth get in the way of a good story. But I was very conscious of that, mate. To pause and look around and acknowledge literally how far we've come and how the objective was getting closer, but more than anything, just to admire the scenery on the way of what's right in front of us now, in between the banter and the snacks. But yeah, I think it really jumps out at me that picture you've just painted there to the walk that we did.
Yeah, I think with that as well, because I had a lot of self-doubt about doing that walk. First of all, at all. And I'll be honest in saying, and with you as well, because I see you as somebody a lot fitter than me. You've got all of the experience in the military and stuff, doing these long walks and things like this. The imposter syndrome that started to come up a little bit there. It was like, oh, you don't want to make a fool out of yourself here, Carl. Or, it's going to be really easy for Ron, but you're really going to struggle with this. And then realizing that actually, don't worry about that. just go out, just do the first kilometer, do the second kilometer, and realizing that I'm actually more capable of doing it than I gave myself credit for. Again, it's that repeating pattern of allowing yourself to buy into that fear. And by doing so, you're feeding it and giving it more space to grow, which only goes against what you're able to achieve, as opposed to saying, do you know what? And this is where I really realized it. I was showing my boys the Strava map. You can get like a little 3D map of your journey. And I played it to them and watched the route that we took. And they're like, wow, Daddy, you went so far. And I was like, yes, I did. And you know, that was no judgment from them. That was just an observation. And I was like, do you know what? Yeah, I did. And that's what made it special. The fact that I did go so far. I did do it. It was a hard walk. It was a struggle. I'm paying for it now. Even sitting down here, my right bum cheek's still aching.
That's from the walk.
Yeah, that is from the walk. Just want to put that out there. But I think looking forward and looking forward with positivity, looking back at it as an achievement is really key.
Yeah, definitely.
And your snacks, by the way, were brilliant.
Yeah, I've got experience making snacks.
Good snack game.
With your own journey, Carl, and that transfer into coaching, what are some of the pillars that you draw on or that you help people with to come up with their own sort of formula or mindset for their own weight loss journey?
Good question. So as I've, first of all, I lean into a lot of what helped me. And first of all, I think I do that because talking from experience and sharing with people when I coaching them or when I'm talking on a podcast or on Instagram, that is me being authentic because that is my truth. That's my experience. And I feel qualified to talk about my experience. Whereas the imposter syndrome might say, oh, you know, you're not qualified to talk about X, Y, and Z topic. But for me, this is something I feel happy to talk about. And not only that, I know that it helped me in many ways and believe it can help others. So, I mean, the main pillars, it goes again to just the basics being done correctly. And something that I see a lot of people struggle with surrounding weight loss in the same way that I did is just doing the simple things well, but doing them repetitively until they become habitual, until you have those habits in place, which then form that lifestyle that people are chasing, rather than being focused specifically on what the scales say, how much you weigh, losing X amount of weight by X amount of time. I think the focus has to change. Focus has to be like, okay, how do I want to feel? What is my why? You know, what is really important to me as an outcome? So when working with people from a coaching perspective, when working with people who are losing weight specifically, identifying that outcome goal is absolutely key. And I tend not to accept things like, you know, I want to lose 3 stone. Okay, that could be the goal, but why? And dig levels deeper into that. Why is that important to lose 3 stone? And it could be because that person has, they've got a wardrobe full of clothes that no longer fit them, but that's what they want to do. They want to wear those clothes again. Or it was a time before they had children and they want to get back to that. That's when they felt healthy. So there's lots of different reasons why people have a why, but they don't often identify it correctly. So having that outcome goal, and then in terms of pillars, identifying the behaviors or the categories that need to be fulfilled in order to feed into that outcome goal, be it nutrition, movement. And it's going, and again, you taught me this, the basics done well: hydration, movement, nutrition, rest, mindset. And that's the other one. I'm not sure if you gave me mindset as one I added myself, but obviously being a mindset coach, I felt it had to have a place in there. So how do we create actions and behaviors that support those pillars? And it's almost like a pyramid. From there, you have the outcome goal at the top. You have the categories that need to be fulfilled, the buckets, for want of a better way of describing them. And then the individual actions that will fill those buckets without even thinking about the outcome goal. If you do those actions that fill those buckets, by default, those buckets get filled and that fulfills the outcome goal. So then you take away the pressure from having to lose 3 stone or having to do something else. and really breaking it down to a point where you look at your day and you say, okay, what can I do today that's going to support that goal? What's going to fill my bucket today? And it could be, I'm going to drink more water. It means, or I'm going to take the dog out for a walk, or I'm going to prepare my lunch and my dinner so that I'm in control of what I'm eating. Various things, but we work a lot on individual actions because then that creates a lifestyle that can be healthy. So we work on lots of things, but that's what helped me, focusing on individual actions each day, knowing that if it does go tits up, no problem, because you can be compassionate. Again, be kind to yourself. Know that the next day you can go again. And one of the things that we look at a lot is closing the loops of I call them loops of failure. But when somebody's on a trajectory of where it's not going well, they might have had a blowout weekend or feel that they're overwhelmed with the whole wanting to lose weight. Their mindset is just telling them they can't do it. It's often a case of going back to basics, holding that space for yourself to say, okay, I'm learning. All is not lost. I can still go forward. But then reducing it to what feels manageable in that moment. And then just, again, building that base and building up and continuing.
And how much does the sabotaging behaviours come in? And is that easy for you to pick up, Carl, when you're working with somebody?
I think it's becoming easier as I become more experienced at coaching, because I think everyone's got a very individual story, not just with weight loss, but every walk of life. Everyone's got circumstances, situations, traumas, good things, bad things that have happened to them, which bring them to this moment, their way of thinking, the way of doing things. But yet we share so many commonalities in terms of we do things for certain reasons because of self-limiting beliefs, because of habits we've picked up, because social media's created in a way so we become addicted to it. There's so many different things there. Although we're very, very unique in our journeys and it feels very personal to us, there are so many things that are common between us. And identifying those, I think, have really helped me in terms of helping other people, because it's almost as if I notice the talk track starts to go in a certain direction. And it's like, okay, it's usually because there's a limiting belief there, or it's because of a certain habit the person has. So I definitely think it's helped me, and I definitely see the commonalities there between people. So I think having those conversations with people, quite often that person might not see it themselves yet or believe it's because of something else. And I like to think, as I said, becoming more experienced as a coach and leaning into my own journey a little bit as well, I can almost be a step ahead or offer something for them to think about from a different perspective, or challenge it with compassion and in a kind way, but to challenge them and say, but is that true? Is that really true? And that's quite often something for people that hasn't happened before. You know, it's quite sensitive. A loved one might say, you know, you're great just for where you are, or friends and family, you know, tell you the things that you want to hear. So having a space where I, as a coach, feel confident to challenge somebody and that person accepts being challenged, it opens the door to so many new conversations and ways of thinking that haven't been looked at before. And that's where I think the real power of coaching lies.
Yeah, definitely. A new perspective is the opportunity for new actions, isn't it? Just like you alluded to right at the beginning there, the other areas of the journey that you've not explored, in your own personal one being mindset. So this whole journey led you on to the podcast, Carl, and I think it's an incredible achievement. How many episodes are you up to now, mate, on your
We are I say we. It's all me. No one else is getting credit for this. I'm up to about, I think the next one's episode 144.
Wow. That's awesome, mate. Awesome.
Which is great, you know. And when we spoke last time, I just crossed episode 50 myself. See, look where you can be if you keep working hard. You can be just like me. No, but that in itself, and hearing myself talk about being at episode 50, I didn't realize at that point. Now, looking back, I've created nearly 100 episodes more since then. And that's just vanity. The number is just vanity. But the conversations I've been allowed to have with people, the interesting people I've been able to meet, the insights that's created for myself or enabled me to help other people with, that is where the real treasure is in this, and why I absolutely love doing it.
Yeah. Because to get to that number can't have been an easy road.
No. And sometimes, and still isn't. And I'm actually, coming out of a bit of I'll call it a wobble, like a moment of self-doubt, which just shows it, even after nearly 150 episodes, it still happens. I am human. And this was like the lesson I've kind of reflected on, the fact that there'll always be circumstances that change, reasons for things to be difficult in other areas of your life. So you kind of have to ride that wave. You have to be willing to move certain things. And I think we spoke about it on our walk, saying that knowing what you're going to fail at ahead of time and giving yourself acceptance for that. Because I just started a new job in December, completely underestimated how much time and energy that was going to take from me. I thought I'd just walk into it, be easy. I've been doing this game for ages. Turned out not the case, and I'm still learning a lot. And so the times that I would dedicate out of my normal hours for the podcast, for coaching, I found less because I didn't want to fail at my new job. But I had to accept that, okay, I can't create time out of nothing. And if that's what the time I want to dedicate to that, something else has to give. And I made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to dip into family time, because that's something that you mentioned, you say about problems or it not being easy. There have been moments during this journey where I don't want to say obsessive, but I'll use priority, probably is the better way of describing it. But I prioritized the podcast and coaching ahead of other things that are very important to me, one of them being family, and almost started to begin taking it for granted that I could just lock myself away every evening and spend time working on podcast or coaching or a reel for Instagram without there being consequences. And although, my wife has the patience of a saint, she's absolutely amazing and she's fully supported me, that was time before I started the podcast that I'd be sat with her, spending time, with her in the evening. And so having to sometimes look back and go, okay, what is really important to me? If the podcast stopped tomorrow, what would be the impact there? And from a podcast perspective, there would probably be not a huge impact. But if I continue to neglect my family or not have them as a higher priority, the impact that could have to my relationship with my children, with my wife, is huge. And if I had to choose between the two, it's an easy choice to make. I love podcasts, but my family come first. And realizing that, and then thinking, okay, adjust accordingly. If that's really where your beliefs and your values lie, it has to reflect in the time that you spend and the things that you do. So these kind of challenges, they've been difficult to navigate. There's been some difficult conversations to have. I've felt, sometimes that it's not fair. I don't get to do what I want all the time, but realizing that actually I get to do a lot of what I want a lot of the time. But there are other things for other people that I'm committed to helping and doing as well. So the balance for me has been the biggest struggle, I think, and the consistency, knowing that there's that pressure that I created, and pressure I created for myself, that every Monday I have to get an episode out, and the work that goes into being able to achieve that. So there are challenges, and sometimes I feel like I'm going to fail, but it's about, again, breaking it down, stopping, realizing, what is the real impact here, and just adjusting accordingly and realizing you can still go forward. Maybe just not as fast as you were planning to.
Yeah, for what I'm hearing is that harmony, I think, between knowing when you've got that time, effort, and energy to put into the family or to the podcast or to relationships or whatever it might be, and being able to flow with that rather than sticking strictly to what you'd anticipated. In terms of any advice that you might give to people out there who are considering starting a podcast or just starting on their journey, what might be a couple of things that you might offer them as they begin this journey?
I think focusing on the podcast specifically, I think it's such a great platform to share your thoughts. I think you can do anything with it. And, there's nobody to say you can't speak about certain things. I think there are probably laws that prevent you from talking about certain things. I've not tried it yet. It'd be interesting to challenge it. But you've pretty much got free reign. And this is what I love about podcasts. You can find a podcast on almost any topic. So I would say, in terms of advice, if you've got a dream or a passion or something you feel you want to share or talk about, don't compromise that for what you think should be shared. So if you want to share or create a podcast about, I don't know, a really taboo subject or something that feels difficult that you may have been through, mental health, for example, especially among men, because mental health for men is somewhat still of a bit of a taboo. It's something we shouldn't or necessarily talk about, which I think is absolute bullshit. And having seen or listened to other podcasts in which they explore that and knowing the benefit that can have for people, whatever your topic is, whether it's something serious like mental health, if it's about, I don't know, cooking, it could be about anything. Really choose what you want to talk about and go for it. It doesn't matter if you don't think it's going to be popular. It doesn't matter if, it's not a massively talked about topic. If that's what you're passionate about, if that's what you want to do, bloody go for it, because your people will find you. And if that's something you're interested in, you can guarantee there'll be other people who either need to hear it, will get something from it, or can learn from it. And I think that's one of the biggest powers. So I'd say stay true to yourself. Go for it. Keep it simple. Don't overthink it. And just record your first episode, because I don't know if I have got any better over the last 150 years. I bloody hope so little.
You would like to think so, mate. I think you're just being humble there. But
I don't know. Like, I always think about when I go 10-pin bowling, like my first game's always the best, and it's just a decline after that. So maybe I'm getting worse, but I don't think that's the case. But I would not have got to this stage or had confidence to release an episode if I'd have let my fear about releasing episode number 1 stand in my way. And I think it's something we probably all experience. It's that fear of, or will anyone listen, or will someone complain, or not, or will I be judged? And it goes back to, the instinctive, the fear that we have for survival. Will I be cast out and left on my own on a rock to die? I'm still here, and I've had an incredible journey. There's people who have really benefited from me doing the podcast, and really I'm just talking with other people. Yeah, it can impact somebody's life. So don't underestimate just how powerful your message is.
Yeah. I think if I was going to tag one thing on to a bit of advice for somebody starting out, is almost to make a commitment and a date and have somebody help you stick to that in terms of accountability, just to nudge you along, because you're right, it can feel impossible in terms of the judgment we put on ourselves before it's even out there on the airwaves.
Absolutely. I think, to that point, committing, because you'll find 100 reasons why you shouldn't release a podcast episode, or you're not to get started, be it you don't know what technology to use, you don't know what you're going to say. Again, if you identify with yourself exactly the message you want to share and just speak naturally, that's your podcast. That is it right there. And you could probably surprise yourself, but by having that time constraint, telling somebody a bit of accountability, it's definitely beneficial, because otherwise you could just keep kicking it down the road. And it's one of these things that you want to do, but that fear prevents you from doing it. So yeah, definitely, I agree with that.
Have you ever received any criticism or haters, as it were, mate, for your work or conversations? Or
now, I've been very fortunate. I can't even go as far to say that they're haters as such, but I did receive a not very favourable review. I've had 2 things that stuck out in my mind when you said that. The first one was an email I received from a lady saying that my podcast seemed to only focus on middle-aged white women, and that there wasn't enough cultural awareness there. that I should, be looking to different ethnic minorities, different people from different cultures, and that's something that she felt was important because and I think she was African American, and she said, my podcast wasn't really speaking to her. And first of all, I was like, oh, she thinks I'm a massive racist. And the truth is, but I'd never considered, oh, maybe I should have more black people on my podcast, or maybe I need to have people from here or different religions. I'd never really thought about it. I think that I'd stuck within my comfort zone of what I knew or people I knew, and that just gravitated to a certain direction. So that was one. And the other one was a review that I got, which I think was only 3 out of 5 stars, which was massively disappointing.
Scathing.
How dare they? No, it was a bit lower than that. And basically they said that my podcast was repetitive and only talked about Weight Watchers, whereas there's lots of different methods for losing weight. There's lots of different people succeeding in different ways. And so it got very repetitive. And for that reason, they stopped listening. First of all, I was kind of like, that's not true. Got very defensive. Like, that's not true. I've got lots of different episodes. But then tried to see it as an opportunity. And so thought, okay, how do I add more variety? What can I do? Because these two pieces of negative feedback were actually, you could say linked, that there wasn't enough diversity in my podcast. Now, 2 things here, if I can. First of all, I don't have to change it. I could continue doing exactly what I wanted, because if that's what I felt was important, if that was my message, if that was what I enjoyed doing and who I wanted to interview, my podcast, I can choose. On the other side of it, from I would say a growth mindset perspective, it was, okay, maybe there's an opportunity to help. Maybe there's an opportunity to help even more people. And if that means being more diverse in my podcast and that would help to reach more people, then maybe it's a great idea. So rather than being defensive, it took me a couple of days to get over myself. I realized, okay, maybe I can start looking at different cultures or different methods and really expanding on that as a way to help me. And I think it has. I've definitely focused last year on having different methods of weight loss. I've had people from different backgrounds, and that's been really interesting. I've learned a lot as well, but I probably had to go closer to the edge of my comfort zone in order to approach those people, because I was entering places where I wasn't so knowledgeable. So that was good for me as well. So yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah, definitely. And have you noticed an increase then in either, not that it's all about statistics, but in the statistics since you've opened up in terms of diversity or other methods, mate?
So, I mean, I'd love to say, yeah, 10x to my listeners, but it's not true. So my podcast downloads, which is a statistic I'm becoming less and less concerned about as time goes on. Maybe because it isn't growing, I've kind of stopped caring about it. I've just given up. No, but the truth is that although it hasn't directly, I think, created an increase in listeners, when I look at where those people are from, before it was very much, 85 to 90% of my listeners were from the UK, female, aged 30 to 45. Whereas now that percentage from the UK listeners has dropped to maybe like 60%. And there's more people listening from the US, which was an area, a geography I'd not even targeted or thought about. But just by interviewing more people from different cultures, it seems to have had that impact and kind of like spread the net a bit more. So that's had a positive impact. I'm happy about that. And again, though, and another piece of advice, if you're starting a podcast, it's very easy to get wrapped up in these statistics. And I am a absolute classic example of this. I was checking every 5 minutes when I released my first episode. Has anyone else listened? Has anyone else listened? And it doesn't help you, because you're kind of making a judgment against, or a comparison against, other people who have completely different sets of rules, lives, opportunities, weaknesses, so many things. But again, focus on your message, find your people, and enjoy doing it. And that, for me, I've learned to realize is the success.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many people listen. I think for me, it's how many people you help.
Yeah. Great advice there. I think something you've mentioned a couple of times is mental health, and so I thought it'd be interesting to just quickly dip our toe into that. And it's funny because I don't usually put those two words together, which is maybe because that's leaning into the edge of my comfort there. And I'm just curious. I'll give this some thought of the words that I use when I talk about that. But yeah, what would be the message to maybe your younger self then, Carl, or a different version of you in terms of your own mental health, your challenges, your struggles, and where you go to for support when it is challenging?
It's interesting, first of all, that you mentioned the fact that mental health aren't two words that you would generally use. And I really wish there was another way. I mean, there may be, but when I'm doing coaching or talking about a podcast, we talk about transformation. We talk about improvement, and it seems to be focused on physical health. And nobody really has any problems or kind of like awkwardness talking about physical health. But then, if we're not talking about physical health, and we're talking about personal development, we're talking about relationship to self, belief, confidence, self-esteem, to differentiate and say, okay, that's not physical health, it kind of by default goes, okay, that's mental health. And that's why I've used it. And I've actually probably used it more on this podcast with you today than I do. I always try and look for an alternative. And I think that's because, for me personally, mental health seems to just have a negative connotation. When people talk about mental health, it's talking about people who are suffering or are looking to improve in some way. And so, but going back to your question, like my younger self, I think looking back, I would have said to myself that really decide what happiness is. Really try to understand what makes you happy. Because as I look back, I realized I wasn't as happy as I thought I was at the time. And going out with my mates, drinking Thursday through till Sunday, not really looking after my health, sleeping very little so that I could stay up later. All of these things, I think, have a real impact on emotionally how I was turning up for myself, how I turned up for other relationships that I had, and thinking that substance abuse, drinking, smoking, whatever it was making me happy because it was a good laugh. And don't get me wrong, had many, many nights out, weekends away, holidays with my friends that were amazing. But I think it come at a cost. And this is something I've been learning as I've been getting older, that true happiness is something much deeper. But you have to kind of get to know yourself as you are, or really identify the things that are important in your life and challenging them. Is that really important? If that was taken away from you, how would you feel? Or if you had to choose between this or something else, which would you choose? And that's the kind of thing that I've been doing, a lot of inward work in terms of what is important to me, what really makes me happy, what is happiness, just in that essence. And by being willing to look at that and ask those questions, and most importantly, find answers, because quite often we do that. We'll ask for questions, but we just kind of poodle along without really thinking about the answer or actually giving it the space and time it needs. So just by answering some of those questions or digging deeper into things, I think gives you that opportunity to really find happiness. And there are things I kind of wish I had done earlier, because I think I would have found that happiness a bit earlier. And go on.
So whilst you say that, then, and what is happiness to you in this moment?
Right now, it's getting to spend as much time as possible. And I can feel myself get emotional just thinking about it. Spending time with my children, my wife, because they're young boys, they're 10 and 8. And something that I've realized, and it's becoming more and more apparent, is that they're not little kids anymore. And soon they won't be young boys anymore. And that'll be gone. That time will be gone. And there's, relationships and family are something for me I value more and more as I get older, because I'm starting to realize that I too, in the same way, if I look at the elder members of my family who will be gone at some point in the future, that will be me soon. And I'm kind of seeing myself getting slowly higher and higher to the oldest member of the family. And, I'm very lucky. I've still got a nan who's nearly 92, but she'll be gone soon. And then, parents, if you go in chronological order of what should happen, then parents, and then it's me, and then I'm done. So realizing that you don't have forever, for me, is actually, rather than being scared of that, has helped me to find happiness, because it's really made me realize that we only have a finite amount of time here. Things move very quickly. And although I think once you reach adulthood, it's very easy sometimes to let the years pass without feeling any kind of significant changes are happening to you. Since having children and looking at the development and changes in them year after year, and the changes they have month after month, and kind of almost grieving that loss of them being babies or toddlers, has really helped me to appreciate what I have now in this moment. And that makes me happy. It makes me happy because I really feel like I'm getting the most out of my life right now. Rather than looking too far ahead or too far behind, it's like, what do I want to happen today? What's going to really, allow me to go to bed at night smiling? And so for me, that is happiness, appreciating what I have around me.
Yeah. And for me, I've been really similar to you. I think a couple of things you said really resonated there. And I think for me, it's along the lines of being present to what I've got around me and experiencing. Because for me personally, it's not always happiness or joyful. But the more I learn about myself, I can observe those things, and experience them rather than sometimes be caught in them or try and make them mean something positive, or try and overplay it or underplay it, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And we had a conversation actually, Robert. I don't remember exactly what it was about, but it was talking about don't make it mean something. And you shared something with me, an experience with one of your children, about just being present in that moment and enjoying it, not hyping it up to be something else. And it might, I want to say it was around Christmas time, because this was quite a significant one for me. Like Christmas, it's Christmas, so you have to do these decorations and you have to eat this and you have to buy these presents. And it's not true at all. Like, just being in that moment, taking a moment to appreciate what you have around you, and just being present. Like, instead of what do I need right in this moment, what do my children need? And that's something that I've realized that can actually give me happiness, rather than thinking, what do I need to be happy? It's what do the people I really care about and love need right now? And by offering myself to them, I find is more fulfilling.
I'm going to misquote it, but my kids have got a book. It's a Catalan book, and the title in English is "When I'm older, I Want to Be Happy." And the first few pages are like instructions almost of how to use the book, firstly for adults and then for the kids. And it says something along that lines. Happiness isn't when we've got everything we want and is going our way. It's recognizing that which we already have now and being grateful for that, or something along those lines. I'm misquoting it probably, but yeah, which is what comes to me as you say that. And also while you're speaking there a while ago, Carl, in terms about mental health, I think then for me, I think you're right, is the negative connotations around, or the taboo around those topics. So the way that I would say that I'm challenged with my mental health, instead of saying that, I just because this comes to me to share, would say I'm struggling, I'm feeling really challenged, or I'm caught inside my own head, or even emotional, really quite emotional. I just thought I'd put that out there, different ways of saying the same thing.
I like that, and I think it's more specific, because at the same time, you say something like mental health, it could be so many different things or nothing. And depending on that the person you're speaking to, it means something completely different for them as well. Whereas if you really, first of all, identify what that emotion is or how you're feeling, it makes it easier to express, but it also makes it easier for you to kind of process it and feel better if you need to. You know, if you are struggling or you're feeling emotional, you're feeling sad, tired, upset, whatever that could be, rather than, I guess, just labeling that up, that's my mental health, looking at it and say, okay, why do I feel like this? What do I need right now to kind of feel better? So yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think it's something we're encouraged to talk more about, but without the instruction book.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And there's something coming for me to share around that as well, is that, yeah, the allowing of it, you know, so talking to somebody, especially, to be able to, like, just like you alluded to there, to express that almost like turns the volume down on it, rather than having to go to a certain type of behavior, some which might be celebrated, training, working, others might be criticized in terms of drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be, to numb it. Is to find another way of releasing that, because so many of us are not taught that. We don't get the tools to. It can be incredibly uncomfortable as adults to start opening those floodgates, which isn't always the case at all. But yeah, I just thought I'd share that, mate. It was because it's quite interesting to talk around these topics whilst we've got the opportunity, given that you've mentioned it, given it's something that I avoid.
Yeah, it is curious, because it's something we all experience for different reasons at different levels, but yet for so many of us it's so difficult to talk about because of that fear of judgment.
Talking of levels, mate, there's a mate of mine who's got a saying that there's a devil on every level. Have you ever heard of this expression?
I think the actual quote, sorry to be a dick about it, but there's a devil at every level.
Okay, sorry, what did I say?
There's a devil on every level. I think just a small thing, technicality. But that is a quote I've heard. And I mean, I wish I knew the person who originally said it to find out exactly what context it meant there. But I guess the devil at every level is, no matter where you are or how far you come, there's always going to be that thing that challenges. What do you think about that phrase, that quote?
Do you know what? I started that off as a joke, but I really think that it is life, 100%. Yeah, wherever we are on our journey, whatever level, it's not if challenge happens; it's when, and for different people that looks like different things. But yeah, 100% I do, mate. It's not happy-go-lucky, everything's perfect. It's a case of finding the support network, learning about ourselves, and learning to manage our responses to the waves that life throw at us. Because yeah,
and I also think as well on that, and like I said, it's a bit of an in-joke we have about the devil at every level, but the fact that if you ahead of time understand, appreciate, and expect there to be something that challenges you or makes it difficult at a certain period, it kind of gives you comfort. Because if you go steaming ahead and you think, oh, you know, there's nothing can touch me, it can be quite difficult to overcome challenges or obstacles when they come if you don't expect them or you don't want to admit that there are going to be some. But knowing that any kind of growth that you have, there's going to be that boundary that one day you're going to have to cross. I think when it comes closer, or when you arrive at it, and if you've looked at all the other barriers you've crossed to get to where you are today, which we often lose sight of, you can then feel encouraged to try a bit harder to do it. Because, like I said, at every level there is that devil, the thing that makes it too much for you to do. But if you've been able to get through those devils at previous levels, there's nothing to say that you can't get through this next one.
100%, buddy, 100%. And I think that's quite a fitting way to start to round up there, Carl. Where could people find out a bit more about yourself or your podcast, buddy?
So I'm still probably most active on Instagram in terms of seeing what I'm about, seeing what I do. If you're interested in coaching or weight loss, I think Weightloss Warrior podcast is my Instagram handle. That's probably the best place, because from there you can dip into the podcast, you can dip into coaching, my membership site as well. So come and follow me on Instagram, send me a message, say hello. I love talking to people. It's one of the reasons I enjoy doing the podcast so much. And if I can help you in any way, if you're listening to this, be it through weight loss or mindset, whatever it might be, I'd love to have a conversation.
Awesome. And finally, anything that I've not asked you about that you'd like to mention, or one last thing to round this conversation off, mate?
Actually, yeah. And I was questioning just then whether or not I'm going to say this or not. And I am going to say this because it's at risk of making you feel uncomfortable. But I just want to say thank you to you for your friendship, for the guidance that you give to me and so many people, I think quite often without perhaps knowing it. Or perhaps you do, but you're just very humble and modest. But thank you for encouraging me when I have struggled and I have found those devils at levels, because I think it's really helped me to move forward. And I see the work you do with other people, listen to episodes on your podcast, and you're really quite selflessly helping a lot of people. So thanks for that, mate.
No worries, buddy. My absolute pleasure. And I completely received that. Thank you. Straight back at you. Thank you for your help and support and the work you do, mate. So I think it's a projection definitely of what you're doing. And
for those snacks on the walk. and the Mary Berry Christmas slices. There you go. Yes. I couldn't stay serious. I had to deflect it somehow.
Love it. Brilliant. Listen, Carl, thanks again for taking the time to speak to us today, mate. Genuinely, thanks for your support, literally as a friend, but also technically in terms of getting things up and running in my own podcast journey as well. I look forward to speaking to you guys soon, pal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.